I was
And
talking to a colleague about this yesterday in Parliament, and he was saying that he couldn't think of any other legislation anywhere in the world which specifically um, meted out the death penalty to one group of people for an alleged attack on another group of people, when only one of them would get the death penalty, and that was there's the law concerning Palestinians and killing Israeli citizens. And I said he was wrong. There was a precedent for that, and that was the 1871 Criminal Tribes Act, which the British passed into law in India at that time, and it's seen as the most disgusting example of racist colonial superiority anywhere, and that is exactly what's being repeated now. And so I do think the rest of the world has to recognize what is actually happening with the political direction in which Netanyahu has taken Israel, and increasingly takes it with the Greater Israel policies of occupying all of the West Bank as well as Gaza, and clearly extending further into all of the neighboring countries. And so the idea that there's going to be a rapprochement with Israel on a freezing of the lines of the ceasefire, the recent ceasefire in Gaza, I think need to think again. First of all, that ceasefire has been broken. And secondly, Israel continues a substantial degree of physical occupation in Gaza on top of the routine bombardment and attacks on the people of Gaza. And so this law goes on as one more law against the Palestinian people that essentially legalizes the genocide against the Palestinian people in general, and legalizes specific acts, including, of course, the behavior and attitude of settlers on the West Bank. And yesterday I was talking with Ofer Kasif, my good friend, who is a left member of the Knesset who is suspended at the moment because of his support for Palestinian people. And we were discussing exactly that. The only policy that Netanyahu and the government have is to intensify and strengthen the occupation. And that's why the global campaign is so important. And of course, also the global campaign to end, first of all, to end arms supplies and military sharing and security sharing. And then is the question of effective, substantial economic sanctions against Israel, which have not really happened by most of the main countries that trade with Israel, that being predominantly the EU countries and the USA. But increasingly, the USA is much more politically isolated from it than anyone else, because most of the European governments have conceded some of the arguments, mainly because of the strength of demonstrations and political opposition all over Europe at the present time. And so we've just got to keep our eyes focused on what is happening, keep our eyes focused on the legal process, but above all, keep our eyes focused on trying to get help and support to those Palestinians that have survived this bombardment in Gaza, and not just give them the food and medical support that they obviously need, but also the support in recognizing their identity, their culture, and their determination to survive as Palestinians in Palestine. Me on. The issue of Palestine and the disgusting treatment of the Palestinian people has got the world's attention in a way it's never happened before. And it's mobilized millions of people all over the world in a way it never has before. And that means we have to ensure that just because there is not really a ceasefire, but a claimed ceasefire, that the news doesn't disappear and people then become complacent and think that they don't need to be doing anything. They need to be doing a great deal. In the case of my own country, we will continue the principal demand of ending all arms supplies, military cooperation, use of Royal Air Force bases, and sharing of security information that the British are undertaking. We'll continue demanding an end to the manufacture of F-35 jets in Britain. 15% of the components are made in Britain. And we will continue defending the civil liberties and civil rights of people that have protested against arms manufacture and arms companies. And I was in the court on Monday morning supporting people who've been charged under terrorism law for displaying Palestine Action placards on the street. Utterly absurd. And all of their cases are being adjourned to sometime next year, which seems to me that it could be the government is expecting to lose its own case in the High Court, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time. And so that's one of our focuses. But the other one is education of the influence that Israel has across the whole of the region, and what I think is the Abraham Accords that do have to be challenged. And the country that is perhaps militarily the most effective in the region beyond Israel is, of course, the United Arab Emirates in their military support for the opposition in Sudan. The opposition in Sudan trying to get control of and exploit the mineral-rich areas of Sudan and Darfur. And one wonders what the connection is between them and those that are supplying the arms from Israel to the UAE. And so we have a special role here to support those people in all of the Arab countries that are opposing the Abraham Accords and opposing the normalization of relations. How can there be normalization of relations when Israel is occupying Palestine, when there are still thousands of Palestinians in Israeli prisons, when there are still Palestinians being tortured in Israeli jails, and there is still the unbelievable levels of bombardment and occupation going on in Gaza, which is killing so many people, and the way in which the settlers are increasingly attacking people in Palestinian villages in the West Bank. And speaking of Mr. Ofer Kassif, gave me a report yesterday on the violence of the Israeli settlers to people in the West Bank, and he traced, I think, about 40 incidents. There are many more than that, but he traced particularly 40 incidents over the recent period, which only resulted in 5 arrests, despite many of those incidents resulting in death of Palestinian people. That is the impunity with which the settlers operate. And they're, of course, really the advance guard for the Israeli takeover of the entirety of the West Bank. And so no complacency whatsoever. Stand up for the rights of Palestinian people and for the people of Palestine to be able to decide their future and decide what form of state or government and state and government they want to have for the future. That, to me, is the watchword of solidarity. It isn't to tell people what to do and how to do it. It's to support them when they're looking for their own self-determination. And lastly, let's hear more of Palestinian culture, literature, art, poetry, music, and so that the Palestinian people are not just treated as victims, but they're treated as what they must be, a very honored and honorable people for all that they've contributed to the world and the incredible bravery and fortitude with which they've got through 70 years of this, but particularly they've got through since 2023 in Gaza. Let's support the Palestinian people. Is that too often in all these discussions, the Palestinian refugees in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, and the wider diaspora get forgotten. They too have a right of return, and we should never forget that.